Welcome to Your Redemptive Birth, the birth story podcast where we hear directly from women who have journeyed from medicalized births to natural ones. I'm Sarah, and together we'll hear from women who have reclaimed birth. Their stories are marked by healing, strength, and deep trust in their bodies. If these stories resonate with you, I'd love for you to follow the podcast and leave a review so more women can find hope here. And for more redemptive birth tips and encouragement, come connect with me on Instagram at Your Redemptive Birth. This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not medical advice. Always consult your healthcare team for guidance specific to your pregnancy and birth. This is Your Redemptive Birth. So happy that you're here. Welcome to the podcast, Alexandra. How are you doing today?
I'm good. We're in the middle of a move and it's a little crazy with 3 boys, but we're doing pretty well. So I'm excited to be here and share my birth story.
I'm so thrilled. We've been talking about doing this for forever. We are friends in real life, and you are pregnant with baby number 4. Yay. And you have 3 other little boys. And you are just a wealth of knowledge. You had first an induction with your first baby, and then 2 home births after that. There were swift fetal ejection reflex situations. And then, now you're working on cooking up baby number 4. So last one. Yeah. Why don't you then take us right back to getting pregnant for the first time and the birth you were hoping for, kind of care you chose, wherever you want to take us.
Yeah. So my husband and I had been married for about a year and we really wanted kids, but we didn't necessarily want them right away, but it sort of just happened. And, I'd been raised to think that you go to the hospital to have babies. And so I knew that I wanted a little bit more of a natural approach. So I made sure I was with a hospital midwife and I really did love her. And so we went through, my prenatal care was pretty standard. I had lower back pain. And then at the end of the pregnancy, she was really honestly great. And she wasn't trying to pressure me, but her husband was out of town for the week. I think I was 41 plus 3 at that point, and her husband was out of town for that following week. And she said, we have great midwives here. You can be with another midwife for your birth. There is this doctor on call in this many days who I don't think you would get along with because they're overseen by hospitalists. So we could start a natural induction with a Foley bulb. She's like, I did that with my last birth. It went really well. I didn't need a lot of drugs. It threw me into labor. You are 41 plus 3 and your fluid is low. I think it was maybe a 7, so not critically low. It was a Friday. I think that had to do with part of my reasons. I would have had to go into the ER to get my fluid level checked over the weekend. And that just sounded like something I didn't want to do. And I wanted her there and I didn't want the doctor I wouldn't get along with. And I guess I was 41 weeks at that point. So I agreed and we went in and we started the Foley bulb. And then it seemed like my body was starting labor and the birth would happen that night. And then everything just kind of slowed down. And I ended up agreeing to Pitocin. And then the days progressed and the induction took 45 hours. And I remember at one point I did want pain relief. And so I asked for a shot of Dilaudid. So that lasted 45 minutes and it was what I needed then. I mean, I think I'd been being induced for 30 hours at that point. And when I came out of it, I didn't ask for anything else. And I was pretty determined that because I couldn't control anything that was going on, I felt like I couldn't control anything that was going on in my labor, that I was definitely not going to have an epidural. And I was so stubborn about it. And I, to this day, don't really know if that was the right choice or the wrong choice. Some women experience relaxation and opening with a long induction when they have an epidural. But I am proud of the fact that I made it through. So, anyway, I was
Yep.
complete at like 38 hours in. And so we'd gone in on a Friday, and this was Sunday morning at like 2 a.m., 2 or 3 a.m. And I remember the nurses were great. There's this one nurse that was just like rolling her eyes a lot. Like, just like she was frustrated that I wasn't getting an epidural and having a C-section. And at one point, I remember looking at her and saying, like, "Have you had a baby before?" And she was like, "No." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Like, she just like didn't say anything to me for the rest of the time. But otherwise, like nurses came in and they were trying to like get me into different positions and trying different ways of laboring, and I felt really supported. And I had this amazing doula with me who was pregnant herself at the time. And so she was exhausted. She was in her first trimester, and she rubbed my feet for hours and like played with my hair and like really tried to support my induction because that's what I had chosen. And she was just trying to be supportive. And I just remember like I couldn't have done that labor without her. Like it would have ended differently. You know, she was just a goddess. And Amanda, I'll probably talk about her because she was there for all of my babies.
Oh, amazing. I love that.
Yeah. So I remember, what was it like? So I pushed for 7.5 hours, which I've actually never heard. Yeah, I've never heard of anyone pushing for that long. And I'll use the term "they let me" because, you know, like I was on the turf.
Right. Yeah.
Women should be able to choose like what they want to do. But I I was
Yeah.
surprised that they let me go that long. But I guess, you know, like my blood pressure was fine. The Soren was tolerating labor.
Mhm.
And, you know, I was game to try different things and different positions and different ways of pushing. And, you know, I also think this might have taken so long because I did ballet for 15 years, and I've
Mm.
since researched that like your pelvic, like the pelvic floor of like a gymnast or a ballerina or some like runners can be like very tight. And I think my muscles just like weren't opening. Plus I was in this space that I wasn't comfortable in with
Yeah.
these like, you know, medical professionals that I didn't know. Um and so anyway, it was like at hour 7.5. Meanwhile, this doctor, that my midwife had to go home because her husband was out of town and she didn't have anyone to watch her kids. And her replacement midwives were very kind and supportive. One of them did like more cervical exams than I wanted, but
Mhm.
I think she was trying to figure out like if I had a cervical lip or like really what was
Yeah.
going on because it
I
didn't make
think I
sense
think
that I was too.
cervical lips are a myth anyway. Like
Yeah.
I know that there's the research about swollen anterior cervical lips, and like
Mhm.
halting labor progress, but I really do
Mhm.
think that it's just like you just needed more time, you needed privacy,
Yeah.
you needed a safe environment, you know, and also just to about kind of how we as women try to rationalize like why it happened or what happened, and it must have been something about our bodies because and so like yeah, you came to this conclusion, yeah, I must have had a really tight pelvic floor because I was a ballerina and I but
Yeah.
I think like ultimately you did end up going on to have fast, really well, you know, amazing births after that.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know, I hesitate to like ever, you know, try to come up with a reason why, you know, reasons internally about our bodies that they didn't work.
Mhm.
You know, I don't know,
I like
but
that. Yeah.
it's also your story, and if that's kind of how you experienced it and went through it, that's also totally valid. But
I think
just a
that's what
just
I
a
thought
thought.
in the moment. Yeah, no, I think
Yeah,
that's what
in
I
the
thought
moment
in
for
the
sure.
moment. And then after my
Mhm.
second baby, I was like, "Oh."
Oh, right. Yeah, that's fair. Totally.
Yeah, so this one's almost over, but so anyway, it was like hour 7.5, and at that point, like my
Wild.
contractions were productive, but they were starting to like space out again because
Mhm.
my uterus was tired. That's a long time to
Exhausted.
push. Yeah, and so I remember saying I would like to try the vacuum because like I knew
Mm.
my options. And this doctor came in. I'm just going to call him Dr. B. He came in full like a wetsuit, almost like he was going to go dive into like Niagara Falls. And he was like angry that I was still pushing. And he was like really rough, like with his, just like demeanor and like not gentle with me. And
Mhm.
I don't know what was going on in his day, but that wasn't appropriate.
No.
And so, yeah, and he's like, you usually get 3 tries with that's standard medical practice is 3 tries with like the suction thing on the
Mhm.
head.
Yeah.
But he was like, you get 2. And I was like, okay. Um,
Gosh.
yeah. And the first one didn't work. And then the second one, his head was born. And I remember the nurse that I really liked her. She leaned over and she's like, if you don't push his body out, he's gonna rip like the baby out of you like right now. You have 10 seconds left in your contraction. So I did. I pushed his whole body out like in that one contraction. And
Wow.
I'm glad she said that. I'm glad that that didn't happen. I'm glad that that I was given the information and I could do it anyway. He went right up on my chest. His APGARs were like 9 and 10, only
Mhm.
because Dr. B doesn't give tens. Like he was a perfectly happy, healthy
Yeah.
baby.
Beautiful baby.
Yeah, and it was yeah, and I was exhausted because they don't let you eat or drink. And I think somebody mentioned on your podcast before, like the calculation of C-section risk, and
Like
I think I
oh yeah.
remember. I don't remember a Bishop score.
Bishop score is like evaluating your like how ready you are for an induction, basically. But
Okay.
I'm not sure
Where
about calculating C-section risk. If there's like a standardized score for that,
maybe
I've never heard of that, but
yeah.
maybe.
Well, so whatever that was, I remember mine being like the best my midwife had ever seen. So she's like, "There's no way
Oh,
you're going to have trouble, and there's no way you're going to need a
I see.
C-section based on this
Gotcha.
score."
So yeah, your Bishop score, you had like a super ripe, ready to go
Yes,
cervix. Then
yeah,
sounds like.
but it still
Yes.
took forever. But it
Yeah.
was fine. I had like the full golden hour. He was the sweetest little baby. We um tried to nurse and tried to nurse. The nurses would like come in and try to help, and I remember just being like really tired in the hospital, like so
Mm.
many interruptions and so many people coming in to check on different things, and it just like it felt really unnecessary. Like I didn't hemorrhage after. Soren was fine.
Yeah.
Um, like I didn't really need that many checks. What I really needed was rest, and so we went home and we tried to breastfeed. He did have like a small tongue tie release in the hospital. But they said, I remember them coming in and saying his frenulum is really thick. So
Mm.
we didn't want to cut like the denser tissue. And I was like, oh, okay. So when we went home, I mean, he felt like a velociraptor trying to nurse. It was awful. Um,
That is awful.
and like I went to an ENT in town, and I later learned from a friend that like a friend who is an ENT that this person didn't have experience with like frenulums, and I
Mm.
did a bunch more research and found that pediatric dentists are the best to go to for tongue and lip tie releases. And then I found this like tongue and lip tie support group on Facebook, made an appointment with him, but I remember it was for like 3 weeks out. So for 6 weeks, I was mostly pumping and nursing like once a day because I wanted that like intermix of like saliva and antibodies for Soren. But it was
Yeah.
just it was like excruciating. And so then he had the worst tongue tie you can have still, even after their like little baby release, and then the worst lip tie. So once that was relieved, it was much easier, but it was just, I think people always say set up a lactation appointment if you want to nurse. And moms don't usually. I mean, they just think like, oh, this will be easy, or like my mom did it, no problem. And there's just nothing like that emotional state afterwards when you're like really
Oh,
struggling and you aren't sleeping and your baby's not eating, and it's just really hard. So I really do recommend that whole lactation appointment. Even if you don't want a nurse and you just want a bottle feed and you need advice about drying up your milk, just schedule an appointment. Like,
right.
um,
Like it's
it's really
really
important.
valuable information. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, those women are amazing. So that was my birth story with Soren.
Oh, amazing. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
And I just had another thought too about oh, the bishop score thing before I forget.
yeah, yeah.
Um, it's interesting that you had a gorgeusly according to their,
Mhm.
their measurements, you had a ready to go cervix and that was going to be enough. But still your body just clearly was not ready to do that,
Yeah,
And how how that can kind of mean nothing still. The cervix
yeah,
doesn't really tell us much about when or how long labor is going to start, or, how long labor is going to last and all that. And I think that's just important for women to know because, if they're going to consent to an induction, it like just because they have a ripe cervix doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be fast or,
yeah,
anyway, I just wanted to mention that. But
yeah.
all right. Well, why don't we transition into your second birth, getting pregnant again?
Sure.
Yeah, whatever feels most important to you. Sounds like
Okay.
breastfeeding was a struggle at the beginning, but then it kind of works
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
Yeah, wherever you want to go.
Yeah, he ended up nursing for like 16 months, and then I had like a labral hip tear from ballet, like a rotator cuff of my hip, and I'd been putting off surgery for like a long time, and so I got it repaired. And I took all of the drugs and just like fed him from my freezer stash. I side note, because I had pumped for 6 weeks, I had so much milk. I was donating to the NICU, to friends, like just gallons of
Amazing.
like extra breast milk. So I fed him from my stash for 2 weeks while I recovered from that. And then he wanted nothing to do with nursing after that. And we tried like an SNS system with like the little tube. So he'd get it faster. We tried all kinds of stuff and he just wasn't having it. So we pumped for like a few more months to wind down my supply and then we were done. But I mean, that's still not bad. That's over a
That's
year.
great.
And
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah. So then we all of our kids were like wanted accidents. So it was like maybe a little under 2 years later. And I got pregnant again. And I I think I was like unrealistically optimistic about the hospital system again. I was like, yeah, maybe this is like, maybe I just didn't advocate correctly. I've listened to so many birth stories since then. I have this midwife I really like. I will never agree to an induction again. Like in hindsight, I would have gone to the ER to check fluid levels and just like waited for my body to be ready.
Yeah.
But then it was COVID. And so I remember the turning point for us in choosing home birth midwifery care was I remember we were in this house that we're moving back into on the staircase, and hospitals were only letting one support person in
Mm.
for birth, and it was either the husband, like, or the doula, or the mom, or whatever. And I remember Dustin looking at me and just saying, "It would have to be Amanda, wouldn't it?" And I was like, sorry, I'm tearing up a little bit. And I was like, "Yeah, I think
Oh,
it would. Like, I think she's the one that I need." Sorry,
no, no,
to
it's
have a
okay.
baby because, yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember just looking at him and being like, this just sucks. Like, there has to be a better way. So I
Mhm.
ended up talking to her, and she recommended a midwife, Barb,
Mm.
and she
Yeah.
was great. And so we met with her. Um, like, we were sold. And then I still had this like feeling of wanting like more traditional care. So I decided to do co-care. I did care with my midwife at the hospital, who I had liked, who had to step out at the last, day and a half of my birth. And then I did care with Barb. And so my plan was that if I was low risk at the end, then I would have a home birth.
Yeah.
And then what happened? We had the 20-week scan, and Gus was measuring huge. He was like 99 plus percentile. And like, I know that those can be off. They usually are, but they're usually more off at the end, like as the pregnancy progresses. Like, there aren't a lot of 20-week babies that are born, so
Right.
we
Right.
don't know the statistics on that, but it tends to be more
Yeah.
accurate earlier from what we know. And so I was like, okay. So I did like a modified glucose test with like raw organic sugar, like 50 grams and water, and I passed it. But then they just like weren't satisfied. So they were like, can you take your sugar for 2 weeks? And I was like, sure. And I had
Uh-huh.
like one high reading in the middle of the day after I had like strawberry jam and ice cream or something. Like, of course it's going to be high.
Of course.
So
Yeah.
then, so then they were like, well, we want you to see this dietitian. And I remember she was just like not nice. She was
Oh,
mean. She
that's
treated me like,
terrible.
yeah, she treated me like I was some like unhealthy idiot who like, and it was so weird because I went in and she's like, well, you need to eat crackers at this and this and this time of the day and all this stuff. And I'm like, I am like gluten intolerant. There's
Right. No, I was
this
gonna
stuff.
say, like, you're like one of the healthiest people I know, actually. So
She's like, well, you need
you're like one of the
cheese
crunchiest,
here. And
healthiest people.
I'm like, I
Oh
can't
my
eat
gosh.
lactose without feeling sick. I was like, I'd be happy to eat like an apple for the sugar or like
Yeah.
it was just the weirdest
What a weird
encounter.
dietitian.
Yeah. Well, and then I ended up with polyhydramnose. And so
Yes.
I don't know if your listeners know what that is, where you have like excess amniotic fluid,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and polyuria, which is you're peeing too much. So it was just like something was off with my body and
Yeah.
water. And I remember like they sent me to like an endocrinologist who was because of the polyhydramnose. And she was like, no, you can't eat salt out of a bowl. And I was like, but I want to eat salt out of a bowl right now. Like my body's
Yeah.
craving salt. And she's like, well, we're going to run like sodium labs. And I'm like, that's fine. And they came back normal every time. Like clearly, like there was something going on with my body where I needed salt. And I think I was like low in magnesium. So I
Yeah. I was
started
gonna
focusing
say.
on nutrition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
minerals. It sounds like
Yeah.
anytime something's off with hydration, I always think minerals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember my fluid level got like the pockets got up to like 24, like
I don't know
which
the numbers, but yeah,
it's really high. But
that
the
is high.
highest she'd ever seen was 32. And like
Mm,
low is considered like when you have low fluid, it's like 5 and under. So
gotcha.
24 was like it's a lot of fluid. So there was like something happening. And I remember my home birth midwife was still like, we can, with cases like yours, we can actually break your water at home and start like an herbal induction. The risk for polyhydramnose people going into labor is that there's like a very high incidence of cord prolapse
Right.
because there's
Yeah.
just like so much fluid. And then, so she's like, but I can manage that. And I was like, okay. And
Wow.
so I focused on nutrition. And magically, at the end of that pregnancy, my fluid levels all went back to normal. And like the polyuria stopped. And like, I remember just feeling so great. And my midwife, who I loved at the hospital, was like, okay, I can't officially say this, but if I could, I would clear you for a home birth. Like, because I had been very honest with her from the beginning. And I was like, okay, thank you. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember just like leaving her practice and just being so happy. And yeah, so then we waited. I remember my home birth midwife delivered the tub, and I remember blowing it up and like looking at it every morning when I woke up in my bedroom, like thinking, this is going to be so great. So fast forward to the day he was born, which was actually at 40 weeks exactly. I remember I was picking my dog up from daycare, and I was like, oh, I'm, like feeling like some some like strong stuff in my, uterus, and this can't be labor. Like, you can't come on his due date. That's weird. And like, the daycare person and I are friends. And so we were talking, and I was like, remember thinking, oh, I have to sit down. And so I like finished up and um, went home to my whole family there, making like, my sister was down from New York. She spent like all of COVID with us, cooking with my husband and making like mushroom terrariums with my
Aw.
2-year-old, and putting them all over our house. And it was like the sweetest time, looking back on COVID, like, being pregnant during that and having so much family time and free time. But I went home, and she had made this like taco feast, and mocktails and cocktails, and like everyone was there. And I remember sitting at the table, and Soren came in to sit on my lap, and I was like, oh, like I'd never felt like, get away from me, from my 2-year-old. I was like, I don't want him on my lap. And so I told him to go sit with my husband. And I think I had like one taco, and I went in the other room, and Dustin came in, because I'm pretty social, especially with my own family. And he's like, what's going on? And I was like, I think the baby's coming. And I think he's like, well, what do you want me to do? And I was like, tell everyone to leave and take the kids and the dog. Like, and he's like, oh. So he did. I went upstairs, and he's like, well, it's happening. Like, I think we need the house. And so like everyone just like marched out. And
Aw.
I remember calling my home birth midwife, and I don't think she realized, of course she wasn't there, so she didn't like see me. She didn't realize like that, birth was happening imminently, and I remember calling my doula, and she listened to me for like through one contraction, and she's like, I'm on my way. And she lives like 15 minutes away. So
Uh-huh.
she drove in, and I remember with Gus, I was sitting in this like blue chair, and it just felt like really stable and solid. I remember like sort of meditating during his like contractions. It almost felt just like really peaceful and calm. And I remember, just like, if you've ever meditated in your life, there's this place that everyone goes to in their head. And I think it looks different for everyone. It can be like a hall of light, the top of a mountain, any number of places. And I remember just like going there during his contractions. And it was really bearable for me. Like, it was really nice. And I remember like I'm organizing the room a little bit in between, and I'm like, Dustin, come up here. Like, I need you. And he's like
Mhm.
cleaning the kitchen, and he's still cleaning the kitchen. And finally, I'm like, I need you to come up here. And he comes
Yeah.
up for a little bit. And then Amanda comes, and, he's like, I just need to finish cleaning the kitchen. And I'm like, okay. And he's resting. I don't think, like, he just had
Disgusting.
gone through a 3-day labor with me. He was like, this is going to take 3 days. Like, I know what this is. Like, she's only been like this for, at that point, like 3 hours. Like,
Yeah.
I just want the house to be clean. So, anyway, we chuckle about that a little bit, but then he finished and came up, and I remember like Amanda Cooks suggested that we like lay in bed together, and just kind of like cuddle, because like of the oxytocin hormones like upping when you cuddle, and that's real pitocin, real
Yeah.
pitocin.
Right.
And I remember like feeling like I had to go to the bathroom, and I remember like sitting on the toilet. I was asking him to fill the tub at this point, but he started, but it takes a really long time
It
to
does.
fill a birth pool, like a really long time. I asked him to fill the birth pool, and he did start it. We ran like a hose with like an attachment from the bathtub to our pool. And meanwhile, I feel like I really need to be in the bathroom. And so I
Mhm.
remember sitting on the toilet, like, women always say this,
Yes.
and I felt like a bowling ball was coming out of my pelvic floor. Like, I remember feeling like looking down. Well, I couldn't look down because I was huge. Feeling, feeling down there and like see, like I felt like this dome, and I was like, "There's no way that's gonna fit." So I remember like freaking out a little bit, and for some reason, it was like too much pressure on the toilet.
Mm,
So I got up and I got onto the bathroom floor, like in front of the toilet, like on all fours.
mhm,
Um, and I remember like kind of roaring like a lion, and
yeah,
I remember hearing the door open. And I guess Barb had just got there, my home birth midwife, and she was like running up the stairs with her bag, like throwing on gloves, like diving
yeah,
into the bathroom at the top of the stairs. And I remember, like, in my own head, I remember like roaring from the pain. And then I think, because it was like there's something weird about my sacrum. Like
mhm,
there's like some angle like that when my kid's head's like past that bone, like maybe like when like after my hip is like open, and when
mhm,
they like something about my sacrum just like it hurts only,
mhm,
like it's only unbearable at that point.
mhm,
And then it passes, like I think when they're like down like a little bit farther in the birth canal. I don't know if it's like the back of their head hits it or something, but it's like
yeah,
it's really intense for me at that moment. And then I remember Amanda or Barb or someone said, put your leg up like you're going to like propose, because that's your hips are the most open in that position.
mm,
And then I remember like having this mental thought in my head, like, okay, like, I don't know how I'm going to control this. It's too big. I can't control this. I think
mhm,
I just have to let go. And I just remember like completely taking a deep breath and just like relaxing. And then my uterus just pushed him out. It was like, it's the fetal ejection reflex. And it's kind of beautiful because it's meant like for mammals in nature who have natural predators. Like when they feel safe, their body's like, okay, we got to get this baby out now while you're safe, while there's no
mhm,
predators around, while
mhm,
like you're in your safe spot, and then you can get to a safer place with your new baby. And that's just, I mean, that's what I experienced. It was like somebody was trying to explain it to me, or no, what was I was trying to explain it to someone else. Somebody's like, well, what does it feel like? And I was like, the closest thing that I can equate it to is throwing up in reverse. It's like you
yes,
can't you can't control it, and it's happening with your baby like in the opposite direction.
yeah,
It's like if somebody were to say mid puke, like, please stop. Like, hold it in. Like, you can't. You really can't. Like, if you don't
no,
have any pain meds or any epidurals and you can feel every part of your body and your body's doing this thing, like, there is no possible way. So I remember his head came out, and my midwife was so calm. She's just like waiting, like patiently. And I don't know how long it was, like maybe a minute. I'm not sure. And then the next contraction, like his body was born. And I have this beautiful picture of like looking at my husband's face in the doorway. And like, I'm just like, I don't know. It was a beautiful experience. And they helped me like sit down on the floor and like put him on my chest. And I was like, he's huge. And they were like, oh no, he's not that big. Like he's really healthy and all this stuff. And I was like, okay. So I remember like going back to my bed to lay down, and waiting for the placenta. And, he's just like snuggled up on my chest, and my husband's next to me, and I'm in my own bed. And it's just so beautiful. And, I remember Barb was like starting to like touch the cord, like, and
mhm.
I was like, oh, I don't need to pull on the cord. And she's like, well, it's been an hour, like, or over an hour. And I was like, can I just push it out? And she's like,
Mhm.
looks at me like, yeah. And I
Yeah,
did. I mean, I just like pushed it out. It was completely detached, and my pelvic floor was like just like tight against like, and just not, it wasn't naturally coming out. So
Yeah.
I did. And then I remember having, I started to feel dizzy and I had like a small hemorrhage with him. And she was like, she tried herbs. I had all these like birth herbs like under my tongue, which did like slow the bleeding down a little bit, but it was still like more than what she wanted to see. So she's like, "Do you mind if I give you a pitocin injection in your leg?" And I was like, "I mean, I'd rather do that than go to the hospital." So she did. Then it stopped, and I mean, everything was fine. The placenta was born. I did have it encapsulated, so I could take it for like hormone balance and headaches and stuff. And yeah, it was great. I would get headaches and take one of those pills, and like they would go away. Breastfeeding was easy with him. I had already had like a tongue and lip tie appointment set up because, you know, looking back at that, like my uncle had to have a tongue tie release in the 60s for speech. Like he couldn't say some of his sounds because his tongue was too short. And then my my mom or my aunt and then my sister also had to have a tongue tie release at 3. And so I think we just have like really short frenulums, and mine was really short. I could never stick my tongue out past my lower lip.
Oh, wow.
But for some reason I could speak fine, and so they never got it released. And so I was getting migraines and like lockjaw symptoms, and I remember I got mine released with my third baby,
Wow.
like as an adult,
Interesting.
and it was the best decision I ever made. Like all
Mm-hmm.
of my TMJ symptoms went away, like most of my headaches went away. It was wild. So anyway, we got his little tongue snipped. He ended up being he was 9 pounds 14 ounces. So he was a big baby. He
Almost
was
10
big.
pounder.
Yeah, he was almost 10 pounds.
Yeah.
And yeah, the human body is amazing. Like the fetal ejection reflex worked with a 10-pound baby when I felt safe and I was in like a safe space. You know, with my husband and my doula and my midwife, just like the people I tend to birth with like a smaller number of people. Like some people are like, give me all the women in my life, or give me, you know, and everyone's different. But I think for me, it's like bare minimum is better, for my emotional state.
And I would say for most women, probably,
Yeah.
bare minimum is better. Yeah. Just like
Yeah.
your husband, you know, maybe a doula, maybe your sister, but like a crowd full of people isn't good for mammals. We like to birth in privacy for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
love this. I love the fact that he was so big because like at your anatomy scan, he was already measuring big, and that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so because, you know, I've mentioned before on like my channel and on my page, like they're so often inaccurate, these growth ultrasounds. And that's true, but sometimes they are. So, okay, but whatever. Like he
Mm-hmm.
was 10 pounds and he came out beautifully, you know, with the
Mm-hmm.
fetal ejection reflex and everything. Like,
Yeah.
and so, because women have such fear, and a lot of doctors have so much fear around bigger babies. And the reality
Mm-hmm.
is that our bodies are made to do this. You know, if you don't have raging gestational diabetes or uncontrolled
Mm-hmm.
gestational diabetes, your body
Mm-hmm.
is like very, very unlikely going to grow a baby that it can't birth. That's just,
Yeah.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
think
I
that you're
agree.
just a testament to that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I felt empowered. And I remember like listening to my husband's perspective afterwards. He was like, that was so cool. He's like, you know, that was so different. Like it just like, it felt like all of the women took back their power in that birth. He's like, you had, you know, the midwives, you were incredible. Like Amanda was incredible. Like you don't need men in like the medical setting to give birth. And it was really sweet to hear him like, you know, feel like I mean, I knew I was strong, but like to be validated by your partner and just, you know, he who was like, I'm going to have an ambulance waiting at the end of the driveway and like, you know, pretty nervous about this experience, you know. And I you know, if it hadn't been for COVID, I probably would have had another hospital birth. I always had home birth on my radar, but I was a little nervous about it. And I was like, maybe with my third baby, I'll do it, you know, in my head. And this kind of gave me the push I needed. And it was the right thing for me. and it was a beautiful birth. So
Yes, I think so. Absolutely. And
yeah,
God works in mysterious ways, and I think that was such a beautiful little nudge. You know, if there are any silver linings of COVID, maybe that's one.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, well, your third birth was another bigger baby, right? Yeah.
Hmm.
He's even
Yeah. So
bigger.
yeah.
Isn't
No, he
Yeah.
wasn't bigger. He was 9'4".
No. Okay. 9'4".
Yeah,
Okay. Well,
yeah.
no,
So
so very normal.
just over 9 pounds. Yeah. So he
Yeah.
was a big baby still, like by
Yeah.
so
By the
anyway, so
whatever
we got,
standard.
yeah. So we got pregnant with him, and we thought we were having a girl. We were pretty sure, and we were going to keep it a surprise. And then I remember, like, at 20 weeks, I was like, I'm just going to look at the file, because we had decided to do co-care again, because like having like polyhydramnios and like some of that stuff, I was like, I
Yes.
don't really mind being checked out like with more testing. Like insurance covers all of it. I can
Yeah.
still make the choice at the end to have the birth that I want. So just for me, that gave me some extra peace of mind. And so
Yeah. I
I
think
opened the file and
sometimes
was like, it's a boy.
I think women, sorry to interrupt,
No,
but
no.
I think sometimes women don't even know that that's an option. And you're right. Like, why can't you have both? I think it's great. I mean, sometimes I think it might for some women stir up some unnecessary anxiety. Like,
It
say at like for your second birth, like, oh, we had, he was measuring big. And so then they start to want to, one little thing leads to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And then you're worried. But
did.
I think that also, though, what if you did catch something that was like very serious,
Mhm.
and but who cares? Like that's why I think it's so great when women get to just do whatever makes them feel safest
Yeah.
and they get to
Yeah.
choose.
What's
Yeah.
best for them. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, because I mean, everyone's different. Some people are like, I just need to trust my body and like trust
Yeah,
my like spiritual higher power. And some women are like, it brings me less anxiety to have the medical test. And I mean, everyone just has a different journey that they have to honor, honestly.
for
So,
sure. Yes. Yeah.
um, so I remember, yeah. So what did we do? We found out he was a boy, and I was at a different hospital, and so she recommended this like a midwife, and I really like this new woman too. Her name is Michelle, and she was great. And I remember this like older MFM doctor came in, and he's like, oh well, measuring big again, like I think we should do another growth ultrasound. And I looked at him
Mhm.
and I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I don't have gestational diabetes, I don't have polyhydramnios. I think I was like maybe 28 weeks at this point. I was
Hmm.
like, I'm not really afraid of a big baby. I think like I'm Scandinavian, like I'm tall, I'm 5'9", my husband's 6'3". Like we're both just like very tall people. I was like, isn't it
Mhm.
possible for women to just make big babies? And he looked at me and he's like, yeah. He's like, yeah,
Yeah.
it is. One time this like woman came in, she must have been 100 pounds, 9 months, like fully pregnant. And she just expelled this 15-pound baby. And I was like, oh, I remember thinking like, interesting choice of adjectives, but also
Yeah.
he might have said 14. It was
Yeah.
like 14 or 15 pounds
Yeah. Like a
and
huge baby.
with
Okay.
no problems. Yeah. And I'm like, okay. And I was
Mhm.
like, so do I need to come back again in 4 weeks? And he's like, nah, you're fine. I'll sign off. And I was really grateful
So
that
glad.
like for the dialogue. I stopped having growth scans, and I kind of proceeded with my pregnancy. And then at the end, I was low risk, so I opted for a home birth. And I remember I was pretty anxious to give like give birth. There was like something about my body that was like felt like it was ready. But I was having prodromal labor for I don't know 45 minutes at a time, like every other day. I don't know if anyone has those contraction apps, but they would say, go to the hospital right now, many, many times during these like prodromal labor spells, but it never felt like the real thing. And so I would take a bath and everything would calm down and I would go about my day. And then around, I think just before 41 weeks, I was talking to my home birth midwife and I was like, I really think I'm going to try the midwife cocktail, which is like,
Mhm.
I'm not advocating for this. This is just like what I chose to do. And it's like Yeah, castor oil, apricot, nectar, lemon verbena tea, almond butter, and hot water. And you just blend it and drink it. So she was trying to put me off of that. She was like, oh, it's a holiday. Oh, all of our kids are off of school today. I mean, which I appreciate the trying to like push it off and just like let my body let it happen naturally. But I was pretty determined. So around 40, I think it was 41 weeks exactly, I took the cocktail and I did feel nauseous, and I drank some like soda water and took a nap, and I woke up and I was having contractions. I remember it was like, I don't know, 4:45 p.m. So I called my cousin was staying with us from Finland, and she came and took the kids to swim, and I was like, I think this is it. And I remember her being like really fascinated by the whole birth at home idea, because they don't do that very much in Finland. They have these beautiful hospital births, but they just don't have a lot of home birth midwife options there. I think I just kind of like went about my night. I kind of like relaxed and was like kind of just feeling the contractions. And for some reason, I wasn't confused about this being real. Like I knew this was real and I knew this was happening. And so I remember calling my doula a few hours later, and she listened for like one contraction. She was like, okay, I'm on my way. And then we were having a hard time getting a hold of my midwife. I think she might have been doing something with her kids, but eventually I know my doula got in touch with her, and I think they all came. This time Dustin was not cleaning the kitchen. He knew that like I give birth quickly. And so he was up there like, holding space with me and just kind of like being present. I kind of wanted to be on my own, but like have him in the room, and he did a really good job of that. And then my midwife came, or my doula came, and she lit some candles, and I was like, I really want the tub ready this time. So Dustin set the tub up, and I remember my midwife coming, and I'd had no cervical checks for the previous pregnancy or this pregnancy ever. And I remember like after she watched me for a while, she's like, I'd like to know what's going on. But I was like, no, thank you. And she like completely respected that. I think I didn't seem like I was in late stage labor, because everything was like really manageable to me. I had this like favorite chair I would sit in, and it just like was grounding, and I would just like close my eyes and go to this like meditative space. My doula I don't think she thought I was in late stage labor either. Anyway, so she convinced me and my husband to like lay down and cuddle, which like increases oxytocin again. And it was a great idea. I felt like things kind of picked up at that point. And then I was like, I want to get in the pool. And everyone was like, oh, I don't know if it's the right time yet, because, that's such good pain relief, but it's like the best pain relief you're going to get at home. So they don't usually recommend it till the end. But I remember like going to the bathroom and like coming back in and just like ripping off my clothes and getting in. Like, oh, she's getting in. Like,
yeah.
And then I was in the birth pool, and I remember transition was really hard. I just don't do well with that point where like the head goes like past my sacrum. It just like it hurts. And I remember like yelling a bit during that time. And then I remember just everything felt calm again. And they thought the birth pool was getting too cool. I think they thought I had a lot more time left to labor. So I remember the midwife was having these, my husband and her assistant like dunk these soup pots in to like remove water. And I remember I could barely like handle that pressure change on my back during contractions. So I like came to awareness, and I was like, not during a contraction, and they listened. But I didn't have enough like, I don't know, primary brain power to say like, the baby's almost here, just stop, but I was totally in my head at that point. And So I
love that you mentioned that too, because I think women who haven't experienced a physiological birth don't understand the complete like lack of word formation they're going to have at the end. They think that they're still going to be able to like talk normally and like advocate for themselves, and it's just so, like you can hardly form words, and so anyway, I love that you mentioned that. Yeah.
No, I think that's great. I think that's like one of the primary reasons like you need a husband or a doula or some sort of advocate, because you are not yourself. You're like yourself in your own. You can't advocate the same way you were. And it's really hard to explain. It's almost like you go back to like your very primitive brain, like you don't have language anymore. You don't have the ability to communicate. And that's not something that people understand all the time.
Yeah,
So
I remember I've heard people call it, anyone who's experienced like altered states, it's very similar to that. Like I'm not a drugs person. I've never really done drugs, but in the same like it's like a psychedelic experience where your brain is just functioning very differently, and it's designed to do that. It's like on purpose. And so women who aren't really afraid of that altered state kind of thing, they tend to go through this a little bit better than women who like it starts to feel a little bit scary sometimes when your brain is just not functioning in that, in the way we're used to. But
yeah,
just like
I've never had that experience outside of birth either, but
Right.
it was very comfortable for me in the moment.
Yeah. That's also
And
good to
so
know.
yeah. And then I remember like I was in the same position that I gave birth to my second, like one knee up and like kneeling down in the tub. And I remember saying the baby's coming, and my doula saying, "Yes, you're doing it." And I think she was just like giving me encouraging words, but I meant like I was like
It's
feeling my
imminently.
cranium, like putting pressure on it, like in the way that felt natural with the water, and then I was like, no, his head is here. And, the head, and then my husband's like going behind me to try to catch the baby because the midwife is coaching him that like, that's where the baby comes out. And, I just like pulled him straight up onto my chest, I remember. And it was the sweetest thing. It was almost, like, no, like I like received my own baby and put my own baby on my chest. And that was just kind of a beautiful experience for me. And then he wasn't really crying right away. And I remember the room just being like very calm, like they were just waiting for him to make sounds. And he started to, and then he started to pink up and make sounds, and then he turned like kind of gray again. And I remember my midwife saying, I would like them to get out of the tub. And I just like stood up because, like you're in your primitive brain, you're not thinking about your own body. You just want to like protect your baby and do the best thing for the baby. And she's just like, you just gave birth. Wait for help. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I don't really remember who said that, but they were right. So they helped me, I think, kneel back down in the tub. And then I noticed that he was like really junky. He had like a lot of amniotic fluid because he was born in his sac. So she took the amniotic sac off of his face right away. And I don't know where I like learned this, but I just knew instinctually that I had to like suck the amniotic fluid off of his like nose and mouth. And it's like the same thing that they do in the hospital with a suction syringe, but I sucked it all. I remember like sucking it and spitting it in the pool. And it was like salty, like it wasn't gross. I can't really explain it. I don't recommend tasting amniotic fluid, but it was just like salty water sort of. And I spit it all out in the pool, and he started like reacting again, but he wasn't really crying. And so, the midwife has, all of the baby resuscitation equipment, like oxygen. She has Pitocin injection. She has everything that you'd need. And I'm just mentioning that because, some people think of home birth midwives as like, kind of like stereotypical like lady with a carpet bag and like
Right.
knitting supplies and bananas, and there's nothing else in there, but they come with like a suitcase full of everything that you would need outside of a hospital, everything that you could possibly have. So I remember her sticking the little like baby mask on and just giving him like one puff of air with this big bag. And it's the important thing about that is that it's like an infant size. So like it expels just enough air into their mouth to kind of like shock them into breathing. And a lot of times when if you're in a situation where you have to call EMS, they'll put an adult mask on the baby and blow out their lungs. And then there's like a serious emergency. A friend of mine who I went to college, that happened to her son. I think she had an accidental home birth and she didn't have a midwife there. And he had to be like life flighted to a children's hospital. So that's important to know. If you're at home having a home birth and for some reason you have to call EMS, make sure they're using a child mask. So anyway, that's all he needed, one little puff of air. And you can actually do it. I mean, look it up if you're planning to free birth, but you can do it with your own like mouth. It's like almost just the amount of air that you can hold in your cheeks and you just over their nose and their mouth, and it's the same thing. And I took him to our pediatrician maybe like a day or two after he was born, because the midwives do perform like a newborn infant exam. And I explained what happened, and the pediatrician was like he was very old school, and like, but he was so interesting. He would like listen to everything I said and like, take it all in and give feedback. And I really kind of I enjoyed working with him, and he urged me to give birth at the hospital. But he understood like my choice. And when I told him about the mask and the air, he was like, "Oh, that's just what we used to do is hold them up by their legs and just smack them on the butt. That's no big deal at all. He's fine." And I was like, "Okay."
Oh my goodness.
All right. I'm glad it was an emergency. Was not an emergency. And I remember my husband he was beside himself during all this, because he didn't understand that, all this was happening like 10 minutes, 2 minutes to probably more like, I have to look at the timestamp, but 2 minutes to 4 minutes after birth, all this happened.
Yeah.
And so my third baby was attached to the placenta, and he was getting oxygen through that and blood. And I mean, he was fine. But my husband didn't know that. And so I remember him just like getting really worried. But he realized afterwards, and we had like some talks about it. But and then the same as my last birth, I laid on my bed, I waited for the placenta. I think it was attached it must have been an hour. And I was just letting my new little baby rest on my chest, and there are all these like beautiful calm pictures of it. And same thing happened with the placentas last time. Like I never felt the urge to push, but when the midwife was like, "Okay, it's been like over an hour," I just pushed it out myself. It had completely detached, and for some reason my cervix had just like closed. And so I wasn't feeling the urge to push, but it was easy to push it out. And then I'm trying to remember anything else. He had the best latch of any of the kids. He had like a very mild tie that we did choose to have revised, but I don't think it was necessary. I think like as his mouth got larger, it would have been fine. But I had been through so much nursing pain with my first that the pediatric dentist was like, this will really make it a lot easier for them both, but it's not 100% necessary, so you guys can decide. But my husband held him for like a little laser, and he didn't even cry with the stretches. He was the most relaxed baby. He would fall asleep in the middle of parties and book clubs, and he was just like the easiest kid. I remember we kept him in our room for like maybe 15 months because he would just fall asleep in his pack and play with like the music on and the lights on, and just like, and
Amazing.
I think part of that like personality, like he was just really relaxed after birth because that's his personality. He wasn't like fighting to enter the world fast. He's just calm. And that's just who he is. And so then, yeah, I was reflecting on like all of their different births and their different personalities. And I don't think that everyone probably has a different opinion on this, but I don't think like that, the birth that our children have like dictate their personalities for life. But for my first, he's like a little bit more like he's intense. He loves with intensity. He's, worried about things with intensity. And he had such a different birth than my other two. He was such a long hospital induction, and I previously didn't think that you carried memories of your birth with you into like childhood and adulthood. But he crawled in my bed. I did think back on the timeline of this. It would have been because we moved, and so it was at our last house. So he would have been 4, and he crawled into my bed. We snuggle with our kids in the morning, and it's like the best the best medicine. But he crawled in like in the morning, and he was like, "Mama, I remember, and I just want to go back in your belly." And I was like, "What?" It's like, Soren, you're so big now, you can't go back in my belly." And he was like, "But it was dark and calm, and sometimes black and sometimes pink, and I was floating." And I was like, "Oh," like, I'm just like, "How did you come up with those colors and that sensation?" Um, and he has watched birth videos with me since he was like 2.5. And it didn't start like, I want to show my 2.5-year-old birth videos. It was like, I was interested in birth. And so I was like looking at videos on Instagram, and he would like crawl in next to me and just like catch a video. And I was like, well, this is really natural and I don't care.
Yeah.
So I was like, maybe he got some of this from doing that, but also like the colors don't make sense to me, and the floating
No, that
sensation
he would know
wouldn't have
that.
got- So then he was
No.
like, and then it took a really long time, and I got stuck. And I was like thinking, yeah, I mean, I pushed for
Yeah.
7.5 hours. You were stuck. And he was like, and then I finally came out and there was this man, and he was the doctor that came in at the end, and he was rough, and he cut my tail. And I was like, Soren, you weren't born with a tail. And he was like, it came from here. And he pointed at his belly button. And I was like, yeah. I was like, did that hurt? And he was like, no, but I didn't want him to cut it. I was like, okay. And he was like, and then I screamed and screamed and screamed, and it was cold, and I wanted to go back in, but no one put me back in. Oh, you sweet boy. And
So
so,
sweet.
I mean, he carried some of that, with him, and it was like,
Mhm.
one of his first memories. It's wild to think that he had memories of before birth. I don't know if he still remembers that now at 7. I haven't checked in with him, but I
Yeah,
wouldn't
you
have
should ask him.
Yeah, I should ask him. I wouldn't have expected it at 4, so
No
yeah, and
kidding.
then I'm pregnant now, and we're hoping for a home birth, so yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Alexandra,
Thank
thank
you,
you so
Sarah.
much. And I know we had some crazy technical difficulties, and I really appreciate that you hopped back on to finish this story because it's
No
it's
problem.
so good. And I just
Thank
really,
you.
the women need to hear it. If you had a woman sitting here in front of you who really wants to have a natural physiological birth, she's feeling fear or doubt, what would you tell her?
I would just say to trust your body. Like, don't listen to anyone else, just trust your intuition and trust your body, and do what makes you feel comfortable, like whether that's like an unmedicated hospital birth or a medicated hospital birth or a free birth or a home birth with a midwife, or you just kind of have to like meet your comfortability level, and like know that your body was designed to do this, and your body is amazing, and your body is beautiful, and your body is capable of so much more than you've ever thought. um and I think only women who
Yes.
have given birth can like really understand that from a birth aspect. You can read about birth, but there's something about, giving birth that gives you a whole different like experiences everything. So yeah, good luck.
It is. Thank you. I appreciate your wisdom.
No
And I know the
problem.
women will too.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Your Redemptive Birth. If you enjoyed today's show, please leave a review on your listening platform to help this podcast reach the women it needs to reach. If you have a redemptive birth story you would like to share, please email me at sarah@yourredemptivebirth.com. I would love to hear from you. Let's spread the redemptive birth word together.